Hello, I'm Tim Russ. Live long and podcast.
Hello and good day and happy almost New Year to you out there in the internet. Welcome. This is episode 6 of the Captain's Yacht interview series from Live Long and Podcast here on this December 30th, 2025. I'm your host, Dave Mader. And in this conversation, we're going to be meeting Rick from Certifiably Ingame, a YouTube channel that takes his passion from Star Trek, his creative process, and he built community through storytelling and shared fandom. He's joining me today aboard the Captain's Yacht for an in-depth conversation. Welcome, Rick. Hello, Rick.
Hi. Nice of you to have me on.
Glad to have you here. I'm a big fan, so I'm really thrilled to get to know you a bit more today and talk to you more. And just
thank you.
The admiration I have. You're widely known for your cinematic, highly researched Star Trek videos that break down canon and semi-canonical lore from fans on every level. And we're both big fans of I believe you are, at least. I'm gathering this, that we're both players of Star Trek Online.
Yeah.
The video game, which has this vast library of ships, environments, cutscenes that you really build into most of your videos, which I really love. Creating clear, visually engaging explainers that bring starships and the factions, the timelines, all the obscure lore to life. So welcome today. I love your channel. And I really encourage everyone out there, if you've not already, to check out Rick's videos, because he's got some really interesting topics and thought exercises and things like that, beautifully visualized. So I'm really excited to get into that with you today, Rick.
Try to keep it varied on the channel. Yeah.
Yes. Are you a one-man show? I was going to ask you, or do you have? You are.
No team. It's just me. I research, script, edit the videos, put them all together. It started with another guy who was working on the channel alongside me, but family life got off the ground for him, and sort of he had to step away as we started moving into more Trek focused stuff. But since then, it's just been me for the past, I don't know, how long has it been now? I think 6 years or something.
6 years that you've been doing this. About the same amount of time I've been doing this channel. Well, we kind of started it even maybe 15 years ago, but we really only got going just before a pandemic hit here.
Right. Yeah.
In terms of the constant build up.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned off air, you're from London originally, England.
Yeah, small town just north of London. Moved over to the southeast instead for university purposes, and then stayed here.
Okay, and so you're would you say you're from the suburbs, or are you from more rural?
Yeah, more suburbs. Literally 20-minute train journey. I'm in central London, so small town just on the north of London. If you know the layouts on the M25, which is the road that goes around London, literally passes underneath the town I'm from. So
okay, so you hear it going underneath?
Yeah, can do. On a loud day, yeah. But that's not where I am anymore. I've since moved then, but that's originally where I'm from.
Okay, and I'm going to go to England. That is my one of my vacation destinations for the near future, and Ireland. I've been to Scotland a long time ago, but it's been I don't know. They all have their subtleties and their differences. So,
very much so.
I am of British descent myself, and so it's somewhere I want to reconnect with. But I'm gathering we're close to the same age. I'm 42. If you're a bit younger than me.
Yeah, but 35.
35.
Like yeah.
So you're my brother's age. So then you would be just. So you probably don't remember Star Trek: The Next Generation necessarily in its original run, I'm guessing.
I can't tell if I do or not. I've got memories of sitting down with my family watching it, but I don't know if they were reruns or if I was catching the tail end of its air. I definitely remember Enterprise because that was airing at an age where I was old enough to actually remember it properly. And I think I remember watching the tail ends of DS9 and Voyager as they were being aired. But yeah, Trek was always on in the household when I was growing up.
Trek was always on. Same with my household. My parents, big original series fans. Yeah. And then when Next Generation came along, they were excited for it, although I don't think they were as hooked on it. But then I was 4 years old when it debuts. But then in terms of its like syndication in the North American market, it was on all the time. It could be on almost any channel, pretty much, and it was a lot. And Canadians watched a lot of Star Trek, so I was definitely exposed to a lot of definitely TNGs, like especially near the end of TNG. And then all of Deep Space Nine and Voyager were big in my life. And then Enterprise, I was like famously out on Enterprise, but then I came around years later on it. But I was my first question for you was like, what pulled you into Star Trek from the beginning? What did you go from like, I love this to I want to make videos about this? What was your journey in terms of that?
So like I say, when I was growing up, it was always on, and Star Trek sort of became a show that I'd watch as a kid and like learn from in terms of like formative like morals and things like that. A lot of people, you know, as kids grew up watching Disney. When I was a kid, the only Disney film that I'd ever seen was Lion King, and that stayed that way for a pretty long time. I grew up watching Star Trek, so my like formative characters, my role models were the fictional characters of people like Picard, Janeway, and Sisko growing up. And I remember just a lot of times watching it where I started to think, wouldn't it be fun if I could see a video on X topic or see a video on whatever topic? Because at that age, YouTube was forming. YouTube was, you know, there. We've been around long enough to see YouTube go from before it existed to what it is now, where anyone can make videos and release content. And I grew up watching that thinking, oh, wouldn't it be fun to go find videos talking on this subject and this thing? And after university, it just got to like this time where I was like, well, why don't I just go ahead and make these videos that I've always wanted to see? Why don't I just go ahead and do them? But in terms of like what drew me into Star Trek, I think just because I can't remember an exact moment of being pulled into it. It's something that's like was always there, you know, growing up with it was always around, and it sort of became that safe, familiar universe to visit.
Right. And are you fans of like other franchises? Like, I'm guessing yes, but like I guess to the same extent, you know, are you as much of a Star Wars guy as you are a Star Trek guy? Or
not as much? I do like Star Wars. I mean, you can see this reflective on the channel. The amount of Star Trek content I put out is like so much higher than anything else, but I will tackle other related science fiction universes. It's also like fantasy universes as well that I'm really big on, but I don't often conflate the two because tackling sci-fi alone is a big enough job as it is.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, we'll get into that. But in terms of like, I'm kind of trying to figure like chicken and the egg here in terms of like, were you already playing Star Trek online and then you started this Certifiably Ingame channel and then you're like, well, I can use this footage. It's not copyright, you know, I can use this and, you know, bingo, which I think is so smart. I think it's so impressive what you do. And I'm like, I can do that too. I can like circle around the ships, but he was really intelligent in terms of, you know, you can use your own version of Voyager. You can use your own version, use the stock footage from the space station, whatever.
Yeah, it was after I don't know. I used to use live action clips to illustrate what I was talking about in my earlier videos. And after, it doesn't matter what you do to the footage, how much you fade it out, flip it, invert it, slow it down, whatever. After a set amount of time, it will probably get content ID identified some way or another. And then that entire video falls out of my hands.
Right.
And part of what I like doing is I don't like to over monetize my content, which is from a business standpoint, terrible idea. I'm an awful businessman. But I only put in advert breaks before the video, after the video, and not during. I don't like cutting up my stuff too much. And if I lose control of a video, it gets monetized by someone else and they all just flip on ads everywhere. And I don't know, it's not nice when you've had something you've worked on and some other company just goes, yeah, that's all of that is ours now, despite using, you know, only 10% of the footage or whatever. So yeah, like you said, finding a royalty-free, well, not exactly royalty, but a content, something that's less likely to be claimed, because fundamentally a video game experience is different from a TV show.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not like, well, it's, it's very specific to that particular session of the game. That's not going to be picked up upon. Yes. Not very Ferengi of you in your approach, but maybe more Federation in its sense.
Yeah,
do you remember a certain moment where you realized people were really connecting with your content, that you were getting the views, or you were getting like the engagement that you were seeking?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, back when the channel was first starting. Originally, it was going to be a gaming channel like every other YouTube channel out there. There's, again, nothing wrong with that, and it's a good creative outlet to do, but it's a very saturated market trying to break into with that sort of thing. And I was gaining no traction doing gaming stuff. And then Star Trek Discovery's teaser came out, and I noticed stuff in the trailer that I hadn't seen anyone talking about. And I was like, I identified some sound effects that were playing at the end, to hearing a cloaking device going off. And I put out videos analyzing the little teaser just to say, what can we learn from it? And then that video did better than I expected. Like, it got to like 1,000 views. Within a week, it was on like, I think 4,000 or something. And that was the first video that clearly the algorithm had gone and shone a light on it and gone, yes, you. So I followed it up with the second one when they released another teaser, which also did as well. And from there, I was just like, okay, I'm talking about Star Trek now.
Yeah, and thank you for doing so. And I've been doing my podcast for about, I don't know, about the same amount of time, I think, about 6 years. And we mostly do episode reviews. So we come on here and we'll all watch the episode, and then we come on and talk about it. And the big thing I've picked up on over the years is that everyone gets a little bit something different out of Star Trek, or like there are some maybe archetypes or certain types of fans, but like for me, what I love about Star Trek is that it's this immersive, connected universe that is mostly consistent, although not all the time.
Yeah,
like what happened. Those events, what is wacky or is weird or is nonsensical as they might be, like they still have to fit into the storyline. Trying to up until the Discovery era, like avoiding like retcons and things like that, and like the history and the number of ships and how it feels more real. Like adding all that that detail for me adds so much more complexity. You see a lot of that, I think, in like Star Wars as well, because they have so much detail and everything else. But like my wife, for instance, she doesn't care about any of that. Like, she's a big Star Trek fan. We got set up on a blind date because of Star Trek, but she doesn't care about the registries, the ship classes, the names of the planets, any of that stuff. She's more about the story, the heart, and things like that too. But
that's like an amazing thing about the Star Trek franchise in particular, is you don't need to be caught up in the nitty-gritty and the lore of everything. You can just care about the characters, and it's a beautiful character drama in places as well.
Absolutely. But you definitely speak to, I think, a section of the fandom that I think I'm a part of, that is like, well, we care about, like, what is the history? You did that piece on the Cardassian border wars in particular. I thought was one of your best pieces, because you were pulling from a lot of like, well, somebody makes this reference in one episode and somebody says this in another episode, and it's not necessarily depicted all on screen, but it's an important part of the history of this world, and how that kind of motivates these characters and everything else. So when I was seeing your videos come out, obviously because I'm a Star Trek Online player as well, I was seeing you use those visuals. But in terms of like the content and what you were saying, and you're explaining things, and a lot of this I would already know, but sometimes I would learn different things as well along the way. I'm like, oh, I didn't have that detail, or I hadn't put that together. Or you talked about, like, Jellicoe, or these different, like, these more militarized captains in that piece, right? That come from the wars, compared to like a Picard, who wasn't necessarily of that vein. So really appreciative of that. And I guess my next question for you is, like, how do you decide what your next piece of Trek lore that you want to tackle is? Like, when you go from video to video, is it from requests, or are you like, well, like, I don't know if this is out there?
Multiple sources. Sometimes it's requests. I've got a couple of videos. I make a list. I've got it tucked away down by my desk next to me, basically, where every idea that comes up, I jot it down. A lot of those are from viewer requests, but a lot of them are things that form on naturally from like picking a topic, going into it, and then by researching that, I'll find out 2 more threads. And often while I'm script writing, I'll start chasing up on another one of those threads and adding it to the video. And if it turns into something that's taking up a whole page of work by itself, I might just cut that whole section, put it aside, and be like, that's clearly going to turn into another 10-minute long video all by itself. So a lot of my ideas, generally, they'll come from talking about one thing that will then touch on something adjacent, and then I'll put a pin in that and tackle it again later, which is kind of fun. If you know that, and then you go through my video library, having a look at everything, you can kind of see me tackling similar subjects all throughout a month before I start moving on to something else. And that's usually a result of that creative.
Yeah,
process.
like it seems like you try to keep it to like, I don't know, 10 to 20 minutes somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Around there. I wish I had that restraint, because like we'll watch like a 45-minute episode of Star Trek, and then we will put an hour and a half podcast out about how we broke everything down in that one episode.
This is the secret of getting 2 videos out a week, is that you have to like restrict yourself to it. And when it starts turning into a massively long video, be like, okay, get the cleaver out, cut it in half. That's 2 videos.
That's smart. That's smart. And so do you, I'm guessing your creative process, you start with the script, you write out what you want to say, record your voiceover, and then
I start brainstorming ideas, then I'll start making notes, seeing how much information's available, whether there's a topic I can tackle all in one thing, or whether it's something that will then lead to other things to talk about. For example, I did a video on the Stone of Gol, which was the psionic like resonator that turned aggression against.
Oh yeah, from Gambit.
Yes, and if you watch that Star Trek episode, that is all the lore on the Stone of Gol. Like, there is, what else is there to talk about? Everything you need to know about it is in that episode. I wanted to do a video on it anyway, because I kind of wanted to talk about some sort of, I don't know why I had the hankering to talk about some sort of mythological part of the Star Trek universe, and I picked that as the central point. Made notes on it and realized that, well, you might as well just watch the episode, because that's everything about it is in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
But then you start looking into things like, okay, well, Picard said there's a Vulcan god of death on one and a Vulcan god of peace on the other. And I was like, okay, well then, who are these gods? And then you can look at the Stone of Gol. Well, what was Gol? And then you can find the story about this mythological story in Vulcan's past about a guard who was stationed at the town of Gol who saw a sandstorm approaching, called it a sandstorm, and in reality it was an army and the whole city of Gol got sacked. And then in Beta Canon, there's a monastery nearby to the stone, or to Gol, that was a bunch of Vulcan mind lords who practiced psychic powers of the Vulcan people. And then you start putting the pieces together. It's like, okay, that is probably where the Stone of Gol was made. It was clearly around in a time of war. And then you start piecing all these pieces together to form a narrative, a tale around it. And then, yeah.
Well, what I really find interesting too about, I guess, the whole Vulcan backstory and the fact that they were this warlike race that then that had these technologies, these different gods, the ideology of Surak, the whole Romulan Exodus, and even in that episode, Gambit, like they say, like, well, this was a race that had kind of ties to the Vulcans, or were an offshoot of the Vulcans, or they'd have different languages, and how I guess that whole people like spread throughout the different part of the galaxy, and then eventually formed the Romulan Star Empire and everything else, and even Star Trek Online ties in with some of that, with Romulus, and like and the more like in depth that gets, the more excited I get. I think some fans might find that overwhelming or intimidating, but for me it's like, no, I want to know more, I want to learn more, I want to get into that, and the more canonical the better, because I think I do struggle sometimes with semi-canonical things because they're not necessarily going to resonate with every Star Trek fan, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's limited, I'm like, oh man, I really wish things like Star Trek Online or some of the storylines in Star Trek Online were considered canon or even were more incorporated, because there's some amazing content there that
Definitely, yeah.
is better than some of the stuff I've seen on TV, frankly, in like the last few years. It's a mixed bag, in my opinion. But like, I'm like, man, like the people who created that game really, in my view, get Star Trek really like seemed, what I mean by that, I guess what my vision of Star Trek is, or what I think it was, but mostly colored by like the TNG through Enterprise era, which is what I grew up on.
Yes.
And to me is the definitive Star Trek, and even beyond that, I guess a little bit original series because of the influence from my parents, but making it just feel like this one universe, and that these characters that can pop up and these events, like that's the most exciting thing. And so that's a big part of the reason I wanted to talk to you and get into it with you, because I'm just like, I guess it's nice to see a kindred spirit out there and others like follow your work who are so into that, because it's not as common with Star Trek as I would like in some ways. As I was mentioning, there's all these different types of fans.
Yeah. It's definitely not the whole reason I started doing like the backbone of the channel for a long time was the Star Trek Online story series, where I went through the narrative of Star Trek Online, recording that and putting that out there. And like you said, the reason I did that is because not everyone experiences that. Not every part of the Star Trek fandom is going to go play a Star Trek themed online game, even if they are huge fans of Star Trek. Whether that's just because they don't have the setup, inclination, or frankly desire or time to invest in playing an online game. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if it's Star Trek or not. It could just be they don't have the ability to get to it, and it seems a shame for all that lore, all that storyline that's so well defined and thought out, that's had so much care put into it, isn't being exposed to the entire fan base, so as many people as possible. So
Absolutely.
I wanted to kind of bring that out and showcase.
Well, in particular, like there's that whole Gamma Quadrant storyline with, and in particular, I think Rene Auberjonois, he's and Aaron Eisenberg, they're both passed now since they recorded those lines. But like that's their last performance. Like that's their last take on those characters, and it's in this game. And I think for some fans they're like, well, that's a cartoon, or that doesn't really count, and they're kind of right. But it's kind of a shame that it can't. I don't know. I would love to see it adapted into even a cartoon, like a real cartoon, like something like something I could be accessible more so to a fan than watching, like, I guess a playthrough would be, right?
I think what's key to Star Trek Online is the care and thought that's been put into developing the world and maintaining the characters going forwards. I don't think Star Trek Online would be a particularly good setting for a show, because it's a world in which the Khitomer Accords failed. The Klingons are at war with the Federation. There are Romulans, Cardassians, but everyone's at war with each other. Fantastic setting for a game. Brilliant. When you need faction-based gameplay and an enemy every other story arc, it's a perfect setting. And of course, setting it in a Star Trek galaxy during wartime means you've got the gameplay there. Ship combat, beaming down, doing the away teams, everything like that. That's a brilliant setting for a game. I think in a show, it risks losing sight of, core Star Trek values of always putting the solution first, being science-based.
Well, I think you're dead on with that. Like I've lost track of how many probably hundreds of thousands of people I've probably killed in that game now. Every time I destroy a ship or something like that.
Every time a ship explodes, the whole crew's gone.
Right.
And it does hit that point where you're just like, man, I killed a lot of people.
I kill a lot of people, and that seems to be fine because there's always, I don't know, like sometimes you're fighting like, I don't know, the Iconians or the Klingons or whoever it is, but it's just, but they're not always looking for the diplomatic, or it's like, there's maybe a couple lines, and it's like, there can be no peace, and then we all have to fight because that's the game.
Or a lot of the time, what I do appreciate is a lot of the time, peace talks and things like that happen either off screen, delivered in background dialogue, or it's assumed that they've happened, or in these short stories that they publish online to like flesh out time in between the patches. And in a lot of those, you do get things like the scientific method unfolding. We develop a viral agent that we can deploy to take out an entire enemy armada, but we need your captain to be the one to deploy it. Well, where did that viral agent come from? That's because in between stories, a science team off somewhere was off making it and researching it and developing it. And that sort of stuff's still there. It's just we as the player, we're not involved. That's not our job in the fleet.
Our job is to destroy things mostly.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know, like scan with a tricorder here and there.
Scan 3 things, destroy 3 things, job done.
Job done. Yeah. Align something with the triangle or
the little mini game. Yeah.
All that. Okay. Well, back. So Star Trek Online's got the cinematic assets that makes your videos feel so seamless. And what do you? I think you will say this. Like it's a good tool for illustrating the Trek lore compared to other options that might be out there. Because I guess you can control the camera, right? Like that's kind of like one of the big advantages.
There's a setting mode, like a free cam mode, which takes a bit of finagling to set up. But once you've got it set up, you can, like free cam and set up paths around models and things like that. Which it's why I always have to be sure to I want to put credit out where credit's due. Obviously, the models are made by the Star Trek Online team and it's all developed and displayed in their engine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful showcase of a lot of really well made and tailored models that have all these minute details added in, and it's some wonderful work. And I could go online and try to find 3D models, animate them, but that's not
time consuming.
That's time consuming for a one-man operation, and it's not in my recent skill set. It was 10-15 years ago. It's not anymore. Editing softwares and 3D modeling software's moved on from when I learned it at uni. So.
Do you have to collaborate with anybody else in terms of getting specific shots of ships or visuals, or do you mostly pull that from your gameplay?
I have done before. There was a ship that I wanted to cover, but I didn't have because it was shoved in a Zen lockbox.
Mm-hmm.
And that means, for those of you that might not know, you basically have to pay for a key with real money to unlock the lockbox, and you might get the ship. So you can't reliably obtain it. So I had to message someone who did have the vessel to be like, hey, could you just send me a file of the ship, and then I can load it up in the editor and get my footage from it then and there, which they did, and as such I credited them in the shot. And should I need to do that again, I'd like to think I'd be able to reach out and do it again, so I can cover ships that I don't necessarily have in game.
Yeah, I still want that Maquis Raider. I'm still trying to get that one in particular. I guess it's on that low buy one, but it's I opted to buy another ship first when I had the opportunity. It's neither here nor there. But moving on. Because I was rewatching your the Voyager video. Why didn't Voyager go to the Gamma Quadrant instead of traversing the Delta Quadrant? And I was watching your Intrepid ship, and I think it was the USS Thames. Is that what you named your ship?
Thames, yeah.
The Thames, right? Yeah, like the river.
Yes.
That was a nice little touch, I thought, and a bit of the personality there. So I think I asked you that in terms of, is there a piece of Trek lore you think fans misunderstand the most?
Yeah, kinda. It's the it's understand, but also it is also open for debate, and that's probably the most recent Trek's fault of shoving everything new into an additional timeline that's outside of everything else. It's a bit of messy subject because you can make an argument that everything from like basically people do it to put Discovery and Strange New Worlds in a separate timeline set aside from TOS, which you can do with the alterations to like time and stuff like that in the past, which they've made specific reference to in the show. But,
well, yeah, like I'm struggling with that as a fan, like because I watch Strange New Worlds and I like Strange New Worlds. I think it's a good show. Yeah. But I'm often struggling with the fact that these are the same characters in many cases that are from original series. Yes. You know, and I kind of go back and forth with my panelists on my podcast about it all the time because like in particular, like you take like Christine Chapel, who the way she's depicted in original series is a vast departure from who she is in Strange New Worlds. Yeah, and we're meant to believe this is the same person. And that, you know, or and so sometimes it works better for me than other times. I think Spock, Ethan Peck's Spock, I think he does, even though he doesn't look like Leonard Nimoy and his mannerisms are different. Like for some reason, I feel like he has the spirit of the character, and the way they write him is fairly consistent with how Spock was.
He does feel like he does manage to embody a kind of like a younger Spock who's like experimenting with his human side a lot more than later Spock eventually would, but then finally goes back to in his older age when he kind of finds that Zen balance of being half human, half Vulcan.
Yeah, but then you take like somebody like Scotty, who you know, is James Doohan in the original version, and to me, I'm like, okay, like Scotty is older than Kirk. Scotty, you know, he's like Scotty McCoy are like older than Kirk. They're a bit older. But this guy they cast, Martin Quinn, who I think he's a good actor, and I think he's nice and everything, but he's so young. He's younger than the guy playing Kirk, and I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense. And I think, and then my fellow podcasters, Adam Woodward would say, Dave, it doesn't matter. It's just the story. Just like, you know, let it go. Don't worry about it. But I guess coming back to that whole idea of it's a connected universe and it's all one thing. And to me, like DeForest Kelley is McCoy. Now I hear Thomas Jane's going to be coming in to play McCoy. I'm like, well, maybe Thomas Jane will impress me, but maybe I won't be able to separate it. And I guess this is the thing inherently with prequels, when you're recasting in prequels that you're always going to be running into. The same thing when I watched that Han Solo movie, when it was like I can't remember the actor's name, but who played the Han Solo. But I'm like, he's not Harrison Ford. He's not, you know, and so it's the same kind of phenomenon here. It's like, I guess it's one thing when you cast like a kid to play like the kid version of a character, but when you're trying to play somebody who's like 10 years younger than another version, that's a whole different approach. I think.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's one of the many problems with picking up a prequel and trying to do a prequel. I think Enterprise managed to get away with it eventually because they were like, we're going to do a prequel, but it's 100 years before TOS, so things are going to look markedly different, and we have the excuse that it's closer to like our timeline than TOS was, so things are going to look more recognizable. And you know,
yeah, I definitely struggled that on my first when Enterprise was first on the air. I was definitely like, this is not like original series, and or how could this be like it seemed too advanced, I guess was the big part for its time compared to how I thought it should look. But they're like, we can't make the show look bad. That was like my first take into it. But I think the temporal Cold War was an interesting way for that to make a prequel relevant, because it was like, well, maybe the timeline's going to change, maybe the future that we know that should follow Archer and Enterprise NX-01 is not necessarily set in stone, is not necessarily going to play out the way we think it will. And same thing with the Kelvin universe timeline, like where in their storyline, but they're like, okay, it's a new timeline. Kirk is not born on Iowa, instead he's born in space when his father is killed. He grows up without a father, and this would be a vastly different timeline. That one is more acceptable to me because I'm like, okay, well, history changed and it diverged.
Yeah, from the start, they established part of the marketing of that 2009 film was something along the lines of, this isn't your father's Star Trek. They made like no qualms. They didn't at all pretend it was going to be in continuity with the rest of Trek. They were like, this is a reboot, a re-envisionment of the setting, these characters are going to be in a different universe, and they took the lore excuse of saying, different universe, therefore different things can happen with these characters. You think Kirk survives until TOS? You can't look at the Star Trek 2009 going into the cinemas and say with complete confidence that every character is going to survive just because they're in the original series, because now it's in a different timeline. Anyone could die.
So I feel like the first 2 seasons of Discovery and all of Strange New Worlds really kind of wanted to have it both ways. They want to be a reboot, but they still want to be connected to the original source material. And I'm like, I guess for the diehard fans like me, I'm like, who are more about the details, more about the consistency, things like that, we're just going to have to, suck it up and just move on, because this is what's needed right now.
Is the conclusion I've had to come to working on Star Trek lore. Like you said earlier on, Star Trek lore has been mostly consistent. There have been bumps here and there. Then Star Trek Discovery comes along like a mallet and just wedges itself in, saying, this is here now. And rather than having this timeline that's got a few bumps, it suddenly goes, oh, there's Discovery. And it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. And that has led to what I think is sort of like an olive branch down the line in Strange New Worlds of them being like, well, I'll tell you what, Romulan interference back in Earth's formation, echoes of the temporal Cold War, things could still be different. But also, this is going to lead into TOS. But this is
going to lead into TOS, and I guess it's a retconning and whatever, and it's all make believe, Dave. Don't worry about it. It's all, that was made in 1967. This is made today in 2025, 2020.
But
did I lose you there?
There's different layers. Sorry, still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I think we had a glitch.
Cool. But there's like different layers to that level of justification for trying to include both changes and saying it's in the original timeline. One is you don't care, in which case it's not an issue for you. It's fine.
Move on. Is it a good episode or not? Whatever.
Yeah. You've got the next level down, which is, well, if it really matters that much, you've got this speed bump in the timeline that we've introduced now to say that temporal Cold War time travel shenanigans might have changed some things. So now place TOS after that and just accept that perhaps if you go watch the original series, if they say something now that conflicts with what came before, just update the line. Like when they first say the eugenics wars happened in 1990, just update it now and in your head redub it with Spock saying the eugenics wars happened in 2020 and then move on.
But why? Why are they happening in 2020s now?
But then you've got the third version, which is to say that, okay, I can't reconcile that. There's too many changes. Let's just say that it's now just a either divergent or overwriting timeline, whichever one you'd rather go for.
Whichever one you'd rather go for. It's a retconning or a new version of the timeline.
Yes, which unfortunately that's the bit of the law that, when you asked me earlier, is there a bit of the law that fans often mistake? And I cited that as being the one I go for. It's because I think deliberately the way they've set it up is that no answer, even mine, isn't going to be accurate, because it can be any or all of the above. It could not matter. It could be a different timeline. It could be one that's overwriting the new prime timeline. It could be that TOS is now just slightly retconned in here or there if you still want to fit it in. But no answer that you come up with is going to be the official one, because the official answer is all of the above.
And sometimes I just ask myself, what is the point? Sometimes of some of these changes or some of the differences. I guess with Strange New Worlds, and Discovery, they're like, well, maybe we want to go back and we want to re-explore Spock because everyone loves Spock, so we need to have him in like the storylines. In some ways, I would just rather have new characters, even if they're set in that same time period, a new ship that might run into the Enterprise or something like that. But I guess that's what Discovery tried to do, but that didn't really work so much. But but some of the changes, like, I don't know, when famously when Discovery comes out, they're like, well, we're reimagining the Klingons as these hairless goblins, right? And, I was like, well, everyone was fine with the way the Klingons looked. I don't really understand the point of this. And the backlash, I can try to just push that aside and say, is this a good story or not? But I think like it's a distraction that feels pointless. But I guess you could say the same thing about like when they did motion picture and they were like, well, what's wrong with the Klingons? Why do we need to give them funny foreheads now and put them in this new armor and give them fangs?
Roddenberry's justification for that, I think, famously was, what do you mean? This is how the Klingons always looked.
Right. And so I guess, like, how can you blame the Discovery writers? Like, the precedent was kind of there in some ways. But I'm like, that was a low-budget TV show. And maybe they're looking at it the same way. Like, well, that's what you could, you used to have to glue a turtle to a guy's head. But now you can put him in a whole, like, look. And you can, I guess, it's maybe that in their mind, that's an improvement. Or that's a technical upgrade. I
think 100% that's what it was. I think when Discovery came along, they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted to be a prequel to an established show to capitalize on the links that already exist there, but also reinvent everything and do something brand new, which you can't have it both ways, but they tried it, and we're still dealing with they put a cloth over it and hammered it down to try to smooth out the timeline as much as they can either side, but there's still just this bump in the road where you can clearly see Discovery was. It's just...
Yeah, even if you're just on this topic of the Klingons, because they had it like when they did, I love Trials and Tribulations in Deep Space Nine, where they go back to the original series, and they're like, well, those are Klingons, and it's a long story, and we're not going to explain it. And then they did kind of explain it in Enterprise.
Yeah, as a lore guy, that episode, like as a fan, loved it. I loved watching that. But going back and looking at that episode with like my lore glasses on, I'm kind of like, why DS9? Why did you have to draw attention to it? Because it could have been just a visual discontinuity. And then Enterprise had to come up with an entire two-parter series justifying why they looked different. Well, they didn't have to.
They didn't have to, but they did it. And even when they did their mirror universe, like they kept very consistent with the original series sets. Yeah. And I think that's like, I guess that's a point of contention, because some people watch original series and go, this is like watching like Adam West Batman. This is like watching a very hokey kind of campy look at things. I think it holds up really well.
I think so too. I think I think the backbone of that series is the friendship between McCoy, Spock, and Kirk. Like their camaraderie going through it is just what carries every episode, even the ones that aren't fantastic.
But it's just always this idea of like, if it ain't broken, why are you trying to fix it? What's the problem you're trying to solve? And sometimes I think this is the thing with an ongoing fan base. Like I'm like, just stay consistent. I think Star Wars does a great job of that. Star Wars actually has been very consistent with its lore. They had when the Disney buyout happened with Star Wars, they had to do the whole retconning everything into Legends material, which was, I think, still contentious to this day, but it undoubtedly meant that going forwards, they could try to ensure that everything that comes out now is in the new narrative universe they're constructing going forwards. Good or bad, it's a good grounding to then be able to generate your own tale going on. And I think Star Trek would have done something similar. Perhaps they would do if they had the resources. But even now, when they release new books, I remember when Star Trek Discovery started airing, they released books around it. And then Star Trek Picard came out and they released prequel books to that. They're insisting that everything that they release now across any medium will be like Disney's approach to Star Wars, where it's going to be all canon. It all counts.
Yeah, it all counts. And then season 2 of Discovery happened and started contradicting the book that was set in the Discovery era Enterprise almost immediately. And it's like, so nothing's changed. It's as before. You've got the shows, and then everything else is maybe?
Yeah. Well, Steve Shives, a friend of the channel, like he was on, or he made a video once where he was like, canon is whatever the owners of an IP say it is, right?
I did watch that, enjoyed that video.
Yeah, he was like, it doesn't have to make sense. You don't have to agree with it. No. But according to Paramount and whoever owns it, they're like, Strange New Worlds is the same universe as the original series. It's the same people, it's the same characters. Until we're told otherwise, that's what we have to accept.
Which is the approach that I tend to stick to with my work. It's not necessarily one that I agree with, but I try to be neutral and objective, and the objective one is whatever Paramount says goes, because they're the ones putting it out right now. So
well, they ultimately own it, but we've got a comment here from Tim Rose saying, Star Trek Enterprise, the JJ universe, TOS, and beyond, they all seem to be in separate parallel universes, and you have a lot of fans who are making their own, what some people call headcanon, right? Like, this is my version of whatever it is. I'm doing the same thing. I'm going, well, I like a lot of what happened in Star Trek Online with the Enterprise F and those storylines, but then here comes Star Trek Picard, and they're like, no, the Enterprise F was actually decommissioned many years earlier. I'm like, why are we doing this? I would almost rather you not contradict.
Because Enterprise G now.
It's Enterprise G, but we're really just naming another ship, which is bad luck.
Should have stayed the Titan.
Should have stayed. I agree. It should have stayed the Titan. But Tim is saying that's the easiest way to explain the production differences. But the fact that we have to explain production differences, I think, has been an ongoing point of friction, going back to, I guess.
I do agree.
Everything else that's come along here. Okay, where do we take it from here? I wanted to ask you too about Star Trek Starfleet Academy and how you're feeling about that coming out in about a month's time, or a little less. It's more like 2 weeks, I suppose, and we get the premiere.
I personally, if it wasn't a Star Trek show, it wouldn't be something that I would probably be interested in. I'd probably look at it because it's a sci-fi show, and I'd want to, keep track on it. I don't know if it's, from what I've seen, the overall tone is not something that I would have. Its overall tone isn't something that would draw me in. If it wasn't Star Trek, as it is, because it's got Star Trek on it, I will be checking it out, even if I wasn't running a YouTube channel. And I would be lying for that I wasn't apprehensive about it, but I did also properly enjoy, without any apprehension, the last series of Star Trek Discovery, like the final series of it. Whereas the previous series, I can't say that going in that I wasn't apprehensive going into everything.
In your British speak series, you mean season? Just so we're
yes, right. Yes.
We say season here. Well, the last 3 seasons of Discovery, they're like, forget us about being a prequel anymore. We're going to like the 32nd century. We're going into uncharted territory. We can do whatever we want. And going on them, I think that was a smart move. And I enjoyed those 3 seasons of Discovery immensely more, because I didn't have to worry so much, or why am I worrying? But focus on well, I never knew this about Spock's details, or how the Sarek family drama, or whatever we got in those first 2 seasons of the show.
They stopped trying to shoehorn it all in. And
they were just kind of free to do whatever, tell these new stories, and I think that freed them up a lot. And so Starfleet Academy rather is set in this timeline, but a lot of people are like, I'm out on Discovery, I'm therefore out on Starfleet Academy, has been one of the sentiments I've heard.
I don't think that's quite fair, just to say just because you didn't like one, you're not going to like the other. I mean, maybe. But also it is a different show that looks tonally quite different as well. So I don't know. I'm going to give it a shot. For example, I felt the same going into Star Trek Prodigy, and I ended up enjoying that.
Me too. Yeah, so, more than I thought I would, because I'm like, well, this is a kids show, Star Trek, but in fact, I did enjoy the storyline quite a bit. I've recommended the series to my friends. But they're like, I'm not going there. They just don't make time for it. They're more likely to make time for a live action show like Starfleet Academy. And here we are. And I guess the tone, tonally, do you feel like it's just too? One of the things we've been talking about here on the channel is that it's too, if you look at this poster from the series, this came out, this was very controversial, and then it got compared very much to this 90210 poster from the early 90s, and this idea that this is going to be some teen drama, melodrama, I think what Riverdale has been referenced a lot, or different CW shows this isn't Star Trek, this is teen melodrama, I guess is the feeling. Which,
regardless of setting, whether it's sci-fi or not, that's not a genre that I've had much interest in viewing, which is why I say that from the outside, if it wasn't Star Trek, it probably would be something I'd be checking out.
But
I've been.
It seems like a wait and see kind of a feeling here. But we're all kind of not necessarily jazzed.
There's one little detail that I want to know what's going on with the female Jem'Hadar that we see in it, because that has some really cool implications, because it implies, well, we didn't have female Jem'Hadar before because the Jem'Hadar couldn't procreate. They were completely beholden to the founders, who had complete control over their genealogy and everything about them. And the fact that we can see a female Jem'Hadar, who I believe is part Klingon in her heritage, I think they mentioned as well.
Yeah, we're told she's like kind of a Klingon Jem'Hadar hybrid.
Yeah, but that implies then that the Jem'Hadar can have kids, and she is the offspring of a Jem'Hadar, which means the Jem'Hadar have got out from under the Dominion's control and are now not this crippled tool of a species that is just there to be the Dominion's beatstick, but are now a fully functioned, fleshed out, developing society of their own.
Well, yeah, when you think about it, like it was
I hope that's the case. That'd be cool
the Dominion War is like 800 years before these events.
Yes.
Too. Yeah. And so a lot could have changed with the Jem'Hadar in that time. Perhaps like we saw in Star Trek Online that, Odo, he gives them the Jem'Hadar like the freedom, he gets them off the Ketracel White, whatever. Maybe he's like, you now have the ability to have sex with Klingons if you want.
I mean, it would be. I think it's a. Hopefully they do go this. I mean, they could just completely not address it, in which case all this theorizing goes out the window. But it would be brilliant to just pay acknowledgement to Odo's return to the link and diffusing of his essence now into the Great Link to be a part of those founders had an impact on them, such to an extent that they were like, maybe we were the bad guys, and started trying to make like amends, and like freeing the Jem'Hadar and letting them do their own thing would be a part of that.
Well, one of the things I did like
Star Trek Online, but it'd be cool to get a canon version as well.
Was it the 4th season of Discovery where they were like, was the species like that were like the dark matter, and they were destroying like the planets, and Book's planet got destroyed?
Yeah, the DNA.
Right?
Yeah.
And what I liked in that series was that, I'm doing it now, season, was that they they said, well, we're bringing together the factions of all 4 quadrants. And that by the 32nd century, maybe the galaxy is less of like this fragmented world, and it's more of a it's almost kind of like how on planet Earth we used to be all separated by these great distances, and then technology improved, and then we're one planet even though we have all these different factions. And that and in that season they're fighting these aliens from another galaxy and a whole other realm, right? Yes. You also had in the original series episode, you had the Kelvins who came from the Andromeda galaxy. And so the point I'm trying to get to is like maybe like the galaxy is more of a planet now in a sense, and they're exploring other galaxies.
Yeah, I mean, almost every ship of that era also I don't think we ever really see it, but they make reference to every ship having slipstream drive. Booker's ship has a slipstream drive. It was non-functional, but he had it. Mm-hmm. And with how much faster that is, think about how much smaller the galaxy is going to be. And bearing in mind, the future that we see in Star Trek Discovery, and now continuing on into Starfleet Academy, is a future that was also hobbled by this big screaming Kelpian burn. But the whole burn thing stagnated everything for a couple of 100 years. So they would be, perhaps even should be, even further along than they actually are if it wasn't for this one event that's set them back a bit.
Right. All good points there. And I guess like what they were setting up in those Discovery seasons, like, we're getting the gang back together. We're rebuilding the Federation. And we saw some of that. But I guess this idea too, now that they've got post-burn and the galaxy's coming back together, like is the galaxy more united, or is it even more chaotic than ever than even what it was in the 23rd century or 24th?
Yeah, I think it, in theory, should be even more united than ever before, because now you can get anywhere quicker. Neighbors that were over in the Delta Quadrant are accessible. I don't think it will be. I think a show needs antagonists, and they will find an excuse to fracture it again.
But the antagonists can come from anywhere. The antagonists can come from another galaxy. Like they don't have to come from this galaxy. But I think we have a hard time in, because in reality, like the galaxy is massive, and as you show, like to go from one end of the galaxy to the other, it takes at maximum warp takes
Yep.
70 something years.
In real life, light speed, not that fast, not fast
Not
enough.
that fast. Even the Kelvins, who had very advanced technology, it took them 300 years to get from the Andromeda galaxy to the Milky Way galaxy.
And then they crashed. Yeah.
And then they crashed it, whatever. But yeah, I think I would like to see them kind of go, maybe like, if you're going to go into the future, go into this new era and go past like the smaller petty rivalries of the older times. Like let's do that. Let's go where no one has gone before.
I really do want to see, my ideal series would be a series set exploring like another galaxy, like the first Federation extragalactic odyssey to another galaxy. Downside with that is it has the chance to be an incredibly boring series, because it might just be series, because it might just be 50 episodes of the void, of just ship going between galaxies, nothing to report. Next episode.
That would be dull.
That would be dull.
But it's science fiction. You can be like, we made up a super wormhole that can go, really far. I don't know. Like I try to want them to stay to theoretical scientific ideas and things like. Don't go too crazy, but sometimes it's Star Trek. You can go crazy.
You could say that after that much time with transwarp technology, that they've created a sort of like a transwarp corridor that they can aim at another galaxy, sort of like the Midas array. They come up with some sort of way to like slingshot a signal across the galaxy. We'll do that, but now we can slingshot it across the universe, and now we can open up a transwarp hub maybe once a month at this particular date when everything's in the perfect alignment. We can just go straight to this galaxy that's adjacent and go exploring somewhere completely new.
Yeah, and now we're doing this rewatch of Next Generation, and I was like, man, this show was so good at just presenting new ideas. Like, it was less about just like what are the Klingons up to this week? What's happening with these bad guys, and more like, here's a whole new concept you've never thought about. Here's a whole moral dilemma you've never considered.
Yeah, things like that. You don't have to make threats big galaxy ending issues every time for them to be threatening. You can make them smaller, you can make them personal, you can make the stakes closer, and if the characters are good, we'll still care about things. Again, like you said, people watch it for the characters as much as the sci-fi consistency in the lore.
Absolutely. Well, and Tim Rose made another comment here. Trek for younger people is okay because we want a new generation of fans. Trek forever. Yeah. I guess, and I think that's what Prodigy has tried to be, and Lower Decks, and like and even just go like this whole new era, right? Like Discovery forward has tried to entice a new younger generation while trying to appease people like me and older people who are like, no, that's not what happened. And I feel like they're not always satisfying either side of that very well.
I think a lot of the motivation behind current era Trek has been to try to grow the fan base, and not just kids, but for like anyone that they can grab, which is why we've had so many markedly different feeling projects. It's just a lot of them haven't panned out exactly. Looking at Section 31, that was something that happened.
That was a ride, I gotta tell you.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's indicative of them trying just all these different things. It's like just loading everything into a scattergun, sending it to wide phaser beam, and just spraying everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. What people
and I feel like Star Trek always kind of did that, or like whenever they did have a successful idea, like you see, like when Wrath of Khan comes out, they're like, every movie has to be Wrath of Khan or some version of that, Then I think when Generation or Star Trek The Next Generation had First Contact, which was this really successful Borg movie, they're like, we need to, everything's the Borg now. Like, especially Voyager, I think, suffered from that, where they're like, we're fighting the Borg every 5 minutes because it was a popular movie a couple of years earlier. So it's kind of always been the way. They're like, do people like this? Make more of it. What a novel idea. Okay, I got a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
So in terms of the videos you made, what's your favorite obscure bit of Star Trek history that you've covered so far?
Obscure bit of Star Trek history. There's a lot of it. I tend to get fascinated by 2 points. One of them is the events leading up to and including the Romulan exodus from Vulcan.
Mm-hmm.
I love the tales that come out of that era, from the Vulcans becoming more peaceable, but from their barbaric origins to this entire segment of them that just deny that whole thing. And how did the Romulans end up so different from the Vulcans? So much so that they're not even compatible as organ donors anymore. What happened? Why are they so biologically different despite
There are subtle differences?
Yeah. It's how? It's not been that long. It's only been like 1,000 or so, 2,000 years or something since the Sundering. So that's always something that I love exploring into. And I intend to, it's on my to-do list, doing a video covering all the apocryphal tales that happened during the Exodus. The fact that the Romulans made multiple pit stops before they found Romulus. And just exactly in canon, we still don't know exactly what the Remans are. Are
they a whole other species, or are they like a mutated Romulan or something?
Did the Romulans get to, or the Vulcans, whatever, those who march beneath the Raptor's wings get to Vulcan and then go, oh, look, it's already inhabited. You're going on the moon. We're having this planet. Or are they an offshoot of...
Or were they native to Remus from the beginning?
Yeah, were they always there? And you've got all these, again, lore, like apocryphal lore, answers some of these questions or provides answers for them that make sense. And we don't have something in universe confirming that. But I love that sort of area. I like the Romulans and their whole tale. So anything around that time period draws me to it. And the other thing is really early, obscure history, like pre-Iconians, like the cultures that the universe is big and ancient, and the Star Trek Federation, Klingons, Romulans, all of that we know now, they're just the civilizations that exist at the moment. There have been many that have come before that either died, wiped out, ascended, moved on, who knows? And some of their relics and items still remain. I mean, the Iconians are old, but the Iconians weren't the first.
You made a video on this, right? Like you made on the Iconians and all like the ancient races. Am I remembering that right?
I've done several. Yeah. So I think
everything that came before, the progenitors and all of that.
Yeah. I've done a video on like the Star Trek timeline that's currently in like 4 parts or something, where I start at the Big Bang and go forwards. And yeah, it's very sparse. There's like very little information in some of these earlier points, but apparently the Q were some of the first evolved life forms. But is that just because they're so powerful that they can go back in time and claim to have been the first anyway? Things like that I really...
Yeah, some of these, like, I don't know if you ever watched Babylon 5, but that show explored some of these ideas with like the older races and the younger races, and how well in that show there's like the first ones, or even amongst the first ones there is the first one, the first being that ever achieved sentience. And but he's immortal basically, and that so over time he's become this infinitely powerful, knowing, almost omnipotent Q-like being. Effectively, spoilers for Babylon 5, sorry, but they can kind of do whatever, and that the Q maybe were at one time mortal. That seems to be floated more and more. And anyway, but I was going to ask you, like, is there a certain era that you think would be the richest to explore for Star Trek lore? It sounds like it might be that, like the prehistory era.
If a show was going to be set in that era, sort of thing, or.
Well, I guess like if you wanted like, a show or even like a series of episodes within a show that might look at a specific time period, like in Star Trek.
I'd say that'd be super interesting to see that. But on a personal level, I'd be like, cool. I want to see the Romulan Exodus.
Yeah, like I think a time travel show could be fun for Star Trek to do, like kind of like a Doctor Who style where they're kind of jumping around different time periods, maybe like the temporal police or something.
Yeah, something set in Agent Daniels' temporal like institute.
Yeah, then you can jump around and say, oh, this is what was happening at this time, without having to have a whole show dedicated to like, I don't know, like the Cardassian Border Wars. But you could go back to the Cardassian Border Wars and like establish a whole bunch of things.
I think with the rise of recent animation in Star Trek, that would be a more achievable series than it being live action, because I think in live action, originally Star Trek Discovery was penned to be an anthology series following the adventures of the USS Discovery in its various iterations down the line. And that didn't happen, because that means every season there would have to be a new set, a new cast, a new uniforms, new everything. So they never did that. But that was the original idea. But with it being in animation, that's a lot more achievable.
Right. Although I don't know if it gets the engagement, right? Like as I was explaining, I just feel like Lower Decks and Prodigy just have been viewed a lot less because they are animated, but they're great for what they are.
Yeah.
Like and Star Wars was so successful. I think part of the reason Star Wars has become so big is that they made all those animated shows for years, the Clone Wars and whatever, that did so much that it's a cartoon, but it's a very adult cartoon mostly. It mostly establishes it's very much tied in with what has already been established with those movies, and goes down the rabbit hole of different worlds, and it does so much more to have rich story building or world building, I suppose is what I'm looking for with that. And Star Trek wants that, but they're not really sure how to go about it, I think, sometimes.
No, and it seems weird that they keep being, I don't know whether it's because it's being produced by every series is a slightly different production group, a different team working on it, but it seems like a lot of that fragmented nature is coming from the fact that they seem to be a bit wishy-washy on adhering to things, to sticking to their guns almost.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let me ask you a couple more fun, lighthearted things. Okay, so if you were suddenly transported into the Star Trek universe, assuming not the Kelvin universe, but the main one, what ship are you hoping picks you up?
Not Voyager. That depends. What do I have an era, or just
any era you can go. Any ship can pick you up.
I think something along the lines of the Excelsior.
The Excelsior?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Excelsior.
Sulu's Excelsior.
Sulu's Excelsior. Because it was set during the golden age of Star Trek exploration, where the only real threat were some belligerent Klingons, but there was no actual full-on war. And it was basically the safest point in Federation history that we've seen.
Yeah, it's like we're mapping gaseous anomalies. This seems pretty safe. Like, don't worry, this is a scientific cruise. We're very unlikely to run into trouble out here.
Yeah, call it cowardly, but I wouldn't want to enter into TNG era, because I'd be like, what year is this? 2265. Things are going to get hairy in 8 years. I'm out of here. Yeah. Or if it was in TOS, there's always the chance that some giant space amoeba or giant glowy green hand is just going to come out of nowhere and just wreck your day.
Well, so, don't forget that even on the Excelsior, Dimitri Valtain might give you some parasitic mind virus that you're going to think a girl's falling off the edge of a precipice.
Yeah, but I don't have to worry about that, and eventually I'll just pass it on to someone else, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll be right. Yeah, and what captain would you trust to get you home alive? Ship aside, like, would it be Sulu to get you home alive, or would you pick another captain?
I mean, Sulu, from what we know, was a reputable captain, did pretty well. But I mean, it's got to be Picard, isn't it? He's probably the one that actually would give the most of a damn about me.
Probably, yeah. He tends to, although he likes named characters, as bridge officers a bit more.
Again, Janeway would get me home, maybe alive or probably dead.
Probably
she'd get me there, but I don't know if I'd be alive.
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag there. Okay. What do you have a favorite ship or faction or era?
Favorite faction, Romulans. I love them. They're so conniving.
You love the Warbirds. Are your?
Yeah.
I haven't even done a Romulan character in the game. I'm been afraid to go to Warbirds.
No, I've got one. My favorite ship, in terms of just how it looks, is the Mogai / Valdor, whichever name you want to apply to it. The warbird that featured in Nemesis, the low flat ones, not the scimitar, the low flat ones that are
the one that Dinatra was commanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those were nice.
Yeah, those are gorgeous. That's my favorite ship. If it had to be a Starfleet one, my favorite is still the Excelsior class.
Still the Excelsior.
I love the Excelsior. Yeah.
Okay, and about your videos, what's the one thing about these videos that people would never guess when you're making them?
That's.
I know I'm putting you on the spot there a bit, but
something that people wouldn't guess just from the videos. That I don't research anything and it's all completely made up.
Do you have like a white whale, a video you've wanted to make but you haven't been able to get to or crack, or there's something that holding you back on it?
Yeah. I wanted to make one that was going to be the entire timeline of Star Trek, which I started trying to make in allusion to points we've made throughout this podcast that the timeline's all squiggly, it's a mess, and kind of to clarify that even before Star Trek Discovery, there were things that just didn't add up. Not as many, but things that just didn't add up. And I wanted to make a video covering basically, look, here's a map of the entire time. I gave up trying to map out the entire Star Trek timeline because I started by trying to document every instance of time travel, no matter how insignificant, because my theory being that every time something time travel related happened, if it wasn't a paradox that always happened,
right,
it's therefore technically now, you've altered things, even if it's only like tiniest degree different. Doesn't matter. It's now technically an alternate trajectory. And I was trying to map it all out, and I gave up with that very quickly.
I did something just with my my side project with Star Trek Online lore and everything, and I was just trying to document what had happened in the 23rd century and the 24th century. And It took me a lot, just major events, not even like little things, like, just these are the major beats. And when I got into the 24th century, because there's so much content there, there's so many things that are depicted, specifically with TNG and DS9 and Voyager, that I'm like, man, it's hard, because the years those shows cover, especially the ones that overlap, there's just so many major events, so many first contacts, so many wars, so many whatever.
Yes.
And so, that would probably be, but it's probably more manageable than you trying to do the entire timeline, which is probably impossible.
The successor to that is the multi-part timeline video that I'm doing. But even then, I'm not going to tackle every little branch, every little time things were altered due to a time travel incident.
That kind of segues into my other question, was if you had unlimited time and resources, like what's your dream project for the channel?
Probably to catalog like infinite resources, infinite time and money, to catalog everything timeline wise in a Star Trek universe, starting from like the beginning, and then every time there's a whole branching narrative, to actually flesh that out as well, to see what happens in that entire universe and iteration. Again, it's just fun to see what if scenarios, and in my mind, that's what Star Trek Online is. It's another official timeline that exists alongside the others.
Yeah, I prefer it in some ways, which is why I don't like when it gets contradicted, but I digress.
There are elements to it which are very good, and again, Star Trek Online's universe was so well thought out and planned,
so well done.
They had like years to be like, okay, well, this event happened, which led to this happening, which led to this happening and this happening. And then the Khitomer Accords fell apart because of the new Klingon Chancellor that just didn't really care about them as much and thought Gowron was weak. Sorry, not Gowron, Martok was weaker. Mm-hmm. And it was all really well thought out and fleshed out. And the universe they've built is a solid one that you could feasibly look at and go, it's unfortunate it happened, but this could.
Well, yeah, like I like how they depicted it, because they were like, well, like basically the Klingons said, oh, the Gorn were a bunch of 8472 infiltrators, and the Federation did believe them, and then the Klingons were aggressive against the Gorn, and that led to the breakdown of relations, and like that's all plausible. I can see.
And then they were proved correct at the end of it, and the Federation was still just like, well, you shouldn't have done that.
Still shouldn't have done it. It wasn't nice. And the Klingons like, you're supposed to be our allies. What are you doing? And we just, even Worf's like, these guys suck. We can't go along with this. Yeah. What's next for the channel in 2026? Do you have a?
I'm attempting. I think I need to start. Well, I say I need to. I want to start looking into diversifying like a couple of other topics. So it's not just all Trek related. Ideally, I'd like to get another channel off the ground, which is hard to do when it's just one person. But I'd like to get another channel off the ground to be able to put into things so I can tackle other topics. Like I say, I'm a big fantasy fan as well, so it'd be nice to be able to cover some fantasy lore,
like Lord of the Rings and those worlds.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings, the different universes of like Final Fantasy themselves. Like I'm a big Final Fantasy fan. But even adjacent sci-fi worlds like Mass Effect and things like that, I'm a fan of, even though that's not had a game come out for years. But, things like that. And, yeah, I'd like to see more things like that on the channel as I go forwards. But whether or not that's attainable, I don't know. It's something I'm going to be looking into, though.
No, don't burn yourself out. I'm just I'm curious. Was just curious. Like I said, you don't have unlimited time and resources, but
I do not know.
But you do a great job, and I always love watching your videos. Where can people find you, and what's the best videos for a new viewer to start with if they haven't seen your work already?
Okay, so you can find me on Certifiably Ingame. That's the channel name. Pun on Certifiably Insane. And generally, I've put together a very long and extensive playlist, if you just want to leave it on in the background, that just covers and goes through just Star Trek lore in general. I think a good place to start, though, not the personnel files, because they're full of spoilers, but for someone jumping into Star Trek, I think just looking into some of the cool starship designs, if you like that. You can watch any of the starship videos I've got on the channel. If you're coming in from with the idea to approach Star Trek Online, I've got the whole story series on the channel there. It depends what you're. I've covered so many topics. It depends what you're.
It really depends on what kind of fan you are, I suppose. But for the casual fan, something as as I mentioned, my wife's not as much into like the really in-depth lore. But we were just watching a couple of your videos this morning, and she was like, "Oh, that was good." So like I think like even though she might say she doesn't necessarily fixate on those details, I think having like those explainer things can be really accessible, for a fan like her.
That's what I'm aiming for. Then, yeah, that is kind of like the motivation behind most of what I do, is to take the facts and spin them in a way that perhaps isn't just dryly reciting them, but actually providing some sort of tale or narrative around.
You do, and you do a really great job at that. Your voice is very soothing, and you're like, "Hey, all, Rick here from," and I'm like, "Hey, it's Rick."
Hi, all. Yep.
Hey, all. And I was going to ask you for a soundbite before we come off here, just to say, "Hey, all, I'm Rick here, and you're watching Live Long and Podcast." Similar to how we had the Tim Russ at the beginning.
Hey all, Rick here, and you're watching Live Long and Podcast.
Love it. Thank you. That's definitely getting pulled. Really appreciate that. Well, I think we're going to sign off for today. I really appreciate all your time and chatting with me and going through all this. It's been amazing. I hope we can have you back on again. Tim Rose saying thanks to both of us. I appreciate that. I want to check out the other content we have here on Live Long and Podcast. We have the ongoing rewatch series where we're covering episodes of this TV show For All Mankind from Apple TV. We are almost done season 4. We'll be on this Monday. We'll be covering season 4, episode 9, titled Brazil. So go and check that out as we are near the end of season 4 and whether or not Adam can take it. Also, check out our coverage of the new Starfleet Academy trailer and the first clip from the pilot episode that we've already put up. That's out there now as well. We also have ongoing episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation reviews happening. We won't be on this week, but next week we'll be back covering season 3, episode 16, The Offspring. You can check, which I'm really looking forward to talking more about. We just covered yesterday's Enterprise right before Christmas, and you can look at that as well. And I think. Oh, and tonight we will be back on for Star Trek Radio Theater at 7 p.m. Eastern tonight. We are doing Galaxy Quest, and we got a great cast to read out all those roles, and I'm really excited for this one, although it's going to be a mad scramble to the finish line as I get ready for all the sound cues heading into that, because procrastination, that's why. Anyway, well, we're going to say good night. In your case, good afternoon for those of us here in North America. And we will see you next time here on Live Long and Podcast. Thank you very much, Rick. And
thanks for having me. And yeah,
have a good one,
night.
everyone. Bye.
Beam up some Star Trek content with Live Long and Podcast. A roundtable movie discussion with Hey, did you see this one? And take a peek into the darkness with Heard Noise, Must Investigate with Michael Chan. Watch us duke it out on trivial debates. And let's chat about TV with the Super Mater Brothers. It's all here on the United Federation of Podcasts.